Hello everyone, and this is my review for TNA Impact Wrestling on January 16th, 2015. Just to begin off the show, basically saying here now, with the move to Impact Wrestling to Friday nights, typically that is a night that I reserve to hang out with friends and everything like that. So reviews for TNA Impact will happen. They just won't happen Friday night when the show airs. They'll more than likely happen Saturday when I've gotten a chance to actually watch the show and then go through it from there on in. And that's basically how the reviews are going to happen. They're going to usually happen on Saturdays from now on. So on to the show. Basically they spent a lot of time, even though there was, a few other focal points in the show. The main focal point of the show was MVP's new group with Samoa Joe, Eric Young, Low Ki, and Kenny King. And they decided to call this group that, MVP was calling a family the Beatdown Clan. Well, okay. That is one of the worst names I've heard for any kind of wrestling alliance to begin with. It's way too generic and it's just bad. I mean, I get the concept. I like the concept of MVP calling it a whole family and everything and what they've gone through as everything else, but the whole aspect of the name itself is pretty bad. But overall, not a horrible thing. Just names absolutely horrible, but the concept behind it is actually pretty good. So it kind of almost evens itself out there. And then them basically cutting their promo right at the beginning of the show, using EY in there, giving his reasoning why he helped them out and everything. To further on the feud between him and Bobby Roode, because that's where they're probably going to go at this juncture. And they had the match later that night with Bobby Roode and Eric Young, and it was really weird that they decided to go with the no DQ match that quickly into the actual feud. The match itself was it was a pretty good one, but like I said, it just came off a little weird that they decided to go with a no DQ match so quickly in the feud versus just having other series of matches to build up to that type of a match. So we'll see where they continue on with that in the future, and who knows where they're going to actually go with it. It'll more than likely lead into something hopefully interesting and a lot of fun to watch, but we'll see where it actually leads off to. You also had Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle. Actually, from what it looks like, and it's not horrible by any stretch of the imagination, don't get me wrong, and it was still a really good match, but it looks like Kurt Angle's lost a step in the ring. A lot of the, like his match last week with MVP and this week's match with Samoa Joe came off a little slow to me. And that was just to me personally. It didn't have the same crisp, fast pace that you've seen from Kurt Angle matches in the past. And that can just be because of Kurt Angle's age. He is getting up there. And like I said, by no stretch of the imagination was this match bad. It was actually really good. It was actually a really good and fun match to watch. So that's just one little point that I'm kind of throwing out there, just because that's what I'm seeing right now. Personally, you had #1 contendership with the tag team titles. You had the Revolution. I liked how they had the Revolution sitting up in the crowd, watching over the match between the Hardys and the Wolves. A really good match between the two teams, and leading into the Hardys actually winning the match and becoming #1 contenders, which, honestly, like I spoke last week, they should have kind of already been thrown there in that sense, because of past storylines. But it is what it is on that one. So they are definitely going with that. I like the whole aspect that they're talking about the Hardys and how they've won every major tag team title except for the TNA tag team title. So they kind of can play off that storyline, and it's a semi-interesting one to go off with it as well. And then they did do a promo later in the night with that new wrestler. Name's skipping my mind, and I'm pretty sure I'll remember it down the road. But the new wrestler, and he's joining the Revolution and everything. He looks very impressive and everything. So we'll see where where he fits in this whole thing. He kind of almost feels out of place in a sorts. I liked James Storm's explanation of everything, of why he's trying to bring him in there and how he's lost his way and how he's finding the right path with the Revolution. But still, to me, he kind of looks out of place in that whole Revolution type of area. So we'll see what happens, and so we'll see what happens with him when they actually give him ring time, and see if he's any good to any good at performing inside the ring on the microphone. We'll see where they actually go with that. The Knockouts tag match was, it was what it was again. It wasn't anything special. It was just more of another way of getting Awesome Kong out there along with Havoc and then furthering that storyline. The match itself was okay. It wasn't anything great. And like I said before, it was what it was in that case. The main event match of the night was Low Ki versus Austin Aries, and really, really good match. And don't get me wrong on any of that aspect. It was a fun match to watch again between the two of them, and then they decided to go with changing the the X Division title back over to Low Ki. Now, in a sense, that's a really good thing for the whole, this whole new beatdown clan that they're going with MVP's group, that they have a title under their belt. But it makes you wonder why they even bothered changing the titles the week before. Was that just something to do on television just to try to get some hype going around the TV show? Who knows? But honestly, it makes that match and that title change the week before kind of pointless, and you just switched it right back to the same guy who had it the week before when he lost it to Austin Aries. So again, really good match, but kind of made pointless by the whole aspect that Low Ki has the X Division title again, where they probably should never have switched it to begin with. And that's, again, my own personal opinion on that. And basically the final segment of the night was the whole Lashley confronting the MVP's entire group and everything on that aspect. And I like the promos between MVP and Lashley in this case. MVP trying to, discuss the whole family aspect and bringing Lashley in there, as he was always part of this group to begin with, and how the world title's all theirs, and it's a whole family grouping to try to keep the title on Lashley. And of course, Lashley being the way he is, wanting to only do it by himself and everything like that. I like that camaraderie there, and it leads into what should be a fun story. I think a fun storyline between Lashley and MVP in this case. And of course, we'll see where they go with that. It was done properly, where at the end of the show, Lashley gets beaten down by these guys because he's refusing to actually work with them in any sense, and he wants to do it on his own and everything like that. So it made complete sense on that. It was actually well executed. I thought it came off really well. So we'll see where they continue on with that here in the very near future. And they did make other announcements throughout the show. And the one thing that stuck out to me, and the reason why it stuck out to me, is because how much I don't like it. And that's the Feast or Fired match. And the reason why I don't like the Feast or Fired match is because it, for the most part, has been completely pointless. Look at how long they waited for James Storm to do the tag team cash-in, and he didn't even really carry the briefcase around the entire time in that sense. But usually they don't even, for the most part, maybe one of the titles will change hands, but they don't really help build anybody in these cases, and they've never really made a significant push out of somebody using one of these briefcases. Of course, you have one person who's going to be written off the show with this as well. So I just never liked the Feast or Fired match to begin with, and they're bringing it back next week, so that's going to kind of be a downer on my side for next week's shows that match is going to be back. I mean, obviously there are people there around that like that type of match, and that's why they keep doing it. But I'm not one of them, and that's just again a personal opinion of mine in this case. So overall, this week's show, it was a pretty good show. It was okay. It wasn't anything too special. They didn't really try to do too terribly much this week with everything they were going, where last week in certain aspects I felt like they were trying to do way too much. This week they didn't really necessarily not do enough, but they didn't overdo anything either. And I felt it did come off relatively well. I don't like the like I said, I don't like the name of MVP's new group or anything in that aspect, but it is what it is. And again, like I said, the show itself was actually a pretty good show to begin with, so it was a fairly entertaining show this week. And that's my review this week for TNA Impact Wrestling, and I thank you guys for watching.